St. Bernard of Clairvaux was traveling with a farmer, who noticed that the abbot kept his eyes cast downward. When the farmer asked why the saint wasn't looking at the beautiful countryside, Bernard explained that he wanted to avoid distractions while praying. The farmer boasted, "I'm never distracted when I pray." Bernard replied, "I don't believe it. Now let me make a deal with you. If you can say the Our Father without one distraction, I'll give you this meal that I'm riding. But if you don't succeed, you must come with me and be a monk." The farmer agreed and began praying, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Then he awkwardly paused, asking, "Does the meal come with the saddle and the bridle too?" All of us deal with distractions when we pray. But St. Paul's advice in the second reading is, be free of anxieties, and practice adherence to the Lord without distraction. So how do we deal with distractions in prayer? Just ask the masters of prayer, the saints. First, quiet yourself. God doesn't compete with our noise, so we must turn it down. Venerable Archbishop Fulton Sheen wrote, "God speaks to the soul in a whisper, but because the soul is waiting for a trumpet, it loses his command." Second, be humble. St. Thomas Aquinas said humility is acknowledging the truth about reality. Since prayer is basically asking God, humility recognizes our dependence on God. Humility is really the ability to say, "God, I need you." Third, have faith. We have to have faith that when we ask God for something, he will answer. St. Thomas Aquinas said, faith is necessary. That is, we need to believe that we can obtain from him what we seek. Obviously, we should ask for things that would lead us closer to God. But consider what happens when we pray without faith. Our prayer becomes insincere, and we start to make a contingency plan behind God's back. Think of Sarah in the Old Testament, when she gave her slave Hagar to her husband, Abraham, to produce an offspring, because they were tired of waiting for God's promise of a child. The letter to the Hebrews reads, "Without faith, it is impossible to please him. For anyone who approaches God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him." Fourth, pray before praying. Prayer is, by definition, supernatural or above our nature, so is beyond our reach without God's help or grace. St. Augustine said grace is necessary every step of the way. Why wouldn't we need to ask for God's grace before we start praying? In the Liturgy of the Hours, it begins, "Lord, open my lips, and my mouth will proclaim your praise." In praying before praying, simply acknowledge the coming together of two thirsts, our thirst for God and God's thirst for us. Fifth, deal with distractions. We may wonder, when I pray and get distracted, does God stop listening? No, answers St. Thomas Aquinas, who wrote, "Purposely to allow one's mind to wander in prayer is sinful, and hinders the prayer from having fruit. But to wander in mind unintentionally does not deprive the prayer of fruit." We need not worry too much about distractions, as long as we don't encourage them. Even Psalm 127 acknowledges that God pours gifts on his beloved while they slumber. This was good news for the young Saint Teresa of Lisieux, who often fell asleep during her prayer. Even the great Saint Teresa of Avila wrestled with distractions. She wrote, "I was more anxious for the hour of prayer to be over than I was to remain there. I don't know what heavy penance I would not have gladly undertaken rather than to practice prayer. The intellect is so wild that it doesn't seem to be anything else than a frantic madman no one can tie down. Yet simply think of distractions as mere clouds passing in the sky, momentarily taking your gaze from the sun of righteousness." St. Francis of Assisi would pray before entering a church, saying, "Worldly and frivolous thoughts, stay here at the door until I return." And what if your distraction involves another person? St. Teresa of Lisieux recommended incorporating that person and their need into your prayer. In this way, she wrote, they reap the benefit of my distractions. And what if your distraction is about the upcoming football game? Good. Turn it into a prayer. Express your gratitude to God about the game, your gratitude for being able to watch it, attend it, or play in it. Pray for the player's safety and fun. Then return to God who takes priority over all earthly things. Above all, prayer refocuses us on what truly gives life. For the Catechism states, distraction reveals to us what we are attached to, and this humble awareness before the Lord should awaken our preferential love for Him. Therein lies the battle, the choice of which master to serve.